doesn't even look real.
We're Lauren and Craig, and since 2008 we've been backpacking, campervanning and volunteering our way around the world. Our aim is to have as much fun as possible and live as cheaply as we can, and we've certainly achieved that over the years.
Tea time!
Cheers! Happy travels!
We're in Patagonia, and after just spending the past 2 weeks in Chile, we've now crossed the border into Argentina. We arrived in the small town of El Calafate, which was the perfect base to explore the Perito Moreno Glacier. This glacier is one of the few ones in the world which is actually growing as opposed to receding, and it's a whopping 30 kilometers in length, 5 kilometers wide and 60 meters high. The glacier was incredible, and we couldn't believe how close the pathway was to it. It was really cold and windy, but we waited for hours in one spot to try and witness the glacier calving. This is when big slabs of ice fall off the face of the glacier. Sadly, we didn't see any big carvings while we were there, but it was still exciting when the small ones happened. Our next stop in Argentina was the tiny village of El Charlton, which sits in Los Glaciers National Park. We used the village as our base so we could do day hikes in the area. The first hike we did was up to Lago de los Tres. Our jaws dropped when we got our first view of these insanely spiky mountains. The weather clouded over towards the end of the trail and some of the mountains were hiding under clouds, but it was still incredibly beautiful. The trail ended with a view of 2 lakes, which are normally a beautiful blue colour, but as we were there in spring they were still totally frozen. In true Patagonian style, it was blowing an absolute gale at the top and was freezing cold.
It is colder than winter in the Arctic, and if I don't blow my nose quick enough because I have a cold, it's not just like goes this direction.
The following morning we woke early to catch the sunrise at Mirador de los Condores, which is just a 2-kilometer walk from the town and offers incredible views of the mountains. Fitzroy is the name of the tallest, most prominent mountain, and the first time we saw it was a couple weeks ago on our flight through Chile. After a quick warm-up and breakfast at our hostel, we then headed on the 20-kilometer trail to Laguna Torre. When we arrived at the lake, we were surprised to find this one melted, but sadly it didn't offer the beautiful blue colour we were hoping. It was a very murky grey. There were a few tiny icebergs bobbing in the water, but the main attraction of this hike was the impressive view of the 3 spiky mountains to the west of Fitzroy and the huge glacier covering the mountain. One thing we hadn't anticipated seeing in this area was a rodeo, but it was the town's birthday, so they celebrate it with these guanchos, which are cowboys, riding the horses.
It's our last day in El Charlton and my cold is still rotten, super congested. So we've just done a very basic walk. That's a basic
Really
walk.
basic, yeah.
Amazing
Just
views.
stroll down the street.
But to get a view of the mountains. And then tomorrow we've got a flight head to coastal Patagonia on the east coast of Argentina.
After a couple weeks of hiking amongst the best mountain scenery we've ever witnessed, it's time to head to somewhere slightly off the beaten track. We're heading to the coast to see Peninsula Valdez. This protected area is known for being one of the best spots in South America to view wildlife, and its biggest claim to fame is the Orcas, who have learnt to beach themselves to hunt elephant seals. We decided to stay on the peninsula for a couple of nights in Puerto Piramides. It's a pretty remote area and there's no public transport available, so we were very lucky when we met a French lady a couple weeks ago in Chile who was doing the same trip, and she agreed to take us along and we would split the fees of the rental car. The next morning we were picked up by a friend and we started driving the dirt road to the peninsula until we arrived at Peninsula Valdez. This area is where the penguins nest, and I was super excited about seeing them and shocked at how close they were to the pathway. It was very entertaining watching them all waddling around. Someone told us they'd just seen orcas swimming north up the channel, so we decided to drive that way and try and catch up with them. Luckily we managed to spot them, but they were quite a distance away, so my footage is very shaky. Suddenly 2 or 3 of the orcas came out of the water and beached themselves, and we couldn't believe what we were witnessing. It was hard to tell if they killed a sea lion or if they were just practicing this hunting method to show the younger ones in the pod how it's done. This is the only place in the world where orcas have been recorded hunting in this way, so we felt really lucky to witness it, and after beaching themselves on the gravel, they wiggled their bodies back into the water and started swimming south again. So we pulled a U-turn and drove back to the penguin nesting area and waited for them to swim past us. As they swam our way, the water around them started turning oily and the seagulls were going crazy, so it looks like they just killed a seal and were very happy about it. After all that excitement, we headed up to Punta Norte to see the elephant seals that live on this beach. On our way back to our guest house, we stopped at Liberia Pyramidas, which is where a colony of sea lions live. The males can be up to 4 times larger than the females, and they have a really thick neck with a furry mane, and that's how they ended up getting the name sea lion. The following day we headed out on a boat trip to see the southern right whales, who swim here from Antarctica so they can give birth. During the spring there's more whales in the water here than there are people living in the village. Some of the whales swam quite close to us, but the highlight was when this mum swam with her white baby underneath our boat. It was time for us to leave the remote village of Puerto Pyramidas and head to the much bigger town of Puerto Madryn. The main reason we wanted to come here was to go snorkeling with sea lions. We had to take a boat trip to the sea lion colony, and once we arrived we jumped in the water and were shocked at how cold it was, even while wearing 2 wetsuits. The sea lions are really wary of people when they're on land, but for some reason when they're in the water they're like playful puppies. They had absolutely no concept of personal space. It was like they wanted to be touched by humans and they kept barging into us. We were warned before we went on the trip that sometimes they like to bite. It's more like a puppy play biting you, but still when you're in the water and you've got this big mouth coming right towards you, it was a little intimidating, especially when they caught you on the back of your leg and you weren't expecting it. I spent a lot of the time laughing through my snorkels, especially when 3 of them began ambushing Craig and trying to bite his feet. I'd say it was probably the best snorkeling trip we've ever been on. We had so much fun and we quickly forgot about how cold the water was. For our final day in Patagonia, we hitchhiked to a beach which is known for having southern right whales swimming right up by the shoreline.
Greetings everyone on the beach. Hey guys. But then it does look like a tail there. That is a tail.
That is a tail. It's two.
It was crazy seeing how close the whales were to the beach, so we sat on the shores and enjoyed a picnic while watching them lift their fins in the air.
Coming up, coming up.
Oh.
Just before we left, we witnessed one very happy whale breaching multiple times.
I just got breached.
We couldn't have asked for a better finale for our trip in Patagonia. As this part of our journey is coming to an end, we headed to Buenos Aires to catch the cheapest flight out the country, and that ended up being to Spain. From Spain, we'll make our way to the Middle East, as we still have a few months of travelling before we need to go back home.